Hello, Ross Brittleton here, and welcome to my podcast. I'm doing various podcasts based on my book, The Art of Living, and on my 30 years experience working in the field of personal development, which I hope you'll find both interesting and useful. All I ask is you approach the materials with an open mind and practice any exercises that are offered on a regular basis. If you can do this, I'm sure you'll find the materials useful. I've been working as a therapist for over 30 years, and all the materials I used are based on my own experience, my research, and are mainly evidence-based. My aim is to give you information and materials that you can use in your daily life that will help you live more effectively in your personal and professional life. If you'd like any further information, then you'll find you can contact me through my website, www.elementals.net. Please feel free to share what you learn with others. Mindfulness is now a multi-billion-pound industry, and I think it's important that people have a clear idea of what mindfulness is and the many ways it can be practiced without having to pay large amounts of money. In this podcast, I'm going to talk a little about mindfulness and hopefully clarify some of the many misunderstandings that have developed due to people not being clear about what mindfulness is and what it isn't. I've been a student and practitioner of mindfulness and awareness methods for over 40 years, and I'm also the author of The Art of Living, which is now in its second edition. So I feel that I'm suitably qualified to talk about the various aspects of mindfulness practice. I'll begin with a little story. One day, a man of the people said to the Zen master Ikkyu, "Master, will you please write for me some maxims of the highest wisdom?" Ikkyu immediately took his brush and wrote the word attention. "Is that all?" asked the man. "Will you not add something more?" Ikkyu then wrote twice running, attention, attention. "Well," remarked the man rather irritably, "I really don't see much depth or subtlety in what you have just written." Then Ikkyu wrote the same word 3 times running. Attention, attention, attention. Half angered, the man demanded, "What does that word, attention, mean anyway?" And Ikkyu answered gently, "Attention means attention." Being able to focus your attention, remain objective, be relaxed, and have an increased level of awareness are all very important skills to learn, as they will help you to live your life more effectively and also help when making any changes in your life. It is, in my view, and the view of many others, essential for anyone in the process of making any changes in their life that they understand the benefits of increased levels of awareness, focused attention, objectivity, and emotional stability, in order for the change process to be effective. This is because life and all forms of change will usually involve obstacles, some level of emotional arousal, and so, once you've decided to make changes in your life, you'll need to be able to focus your attention to be aware of your physical, mental, and emotional state, and also remain calm before you can learn how to do things differently. Here are some observations from various sources that I'd like you to consider with regards to mindfulness. A key point that is made by Robert Ornstein in his book Meditations and Modern Psychology is the following. Most techniques of meditation do not exist as solitary practices, but are only artificially separable from an entire system of practice and belief. A given meditation exercise cannot be perfectly understood as an isolated technique, but only as an integral part of a whole discipline. A great deal has been said and written about mindfulness and meditation, the benefits of mindfulness, and the best ways to meditate. For many, the first thoughts that come to mind will be of sitting quietly, meditating, or watching a sunset. If you're struggling with understanding what mindfulness is, then consider the opposite state, mindlessness. If we act mindlessly, then there is no thought about what we're doing or the consequences of our actions, and we are, in effect, in autopilot. As Dakeman describes in his book, The Observing Self, human beings are a race that sleeps and awakens, but does not awaken fully, because half awake is sufficient for the tasks we ordinarily do. By practicing mindfulness, we're in a position to raise our level of awareness of ourselves, of others, and the world around us. And then we're in a better position to make decisions about our lives. There are essentially two forms of meditation, and these are the turning off form and the opening up form. In the turning off form of meditation, the aim is to focus your attention on one object and exclude from your attention all other things. For example, you could focus on watching a candle flame or be engaged in an activity that requires all your focus and attention. In the opening up form, the idea is to open yourself up. Some examples of this technique include such things as muscle relaxation techniques, becoming aware of your breathing and your thoughts and feelings in your physical state. You're not attempting to stop any thought, feeling, or sensation. You accept its presence and then bring your mind back to the main focus of your meditation, which may be your breathing, your physical self, or your thoughts. By becoming aware of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, you're experiencing another aspect of mindfulness, and that is that most of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are automatic processes that happen without us having time to think about them. As I've mentioned earlier, automatic thoughts, feelings, and behaviors have their place. They save time, but they also mean we're operating on autopilot. Mindfulness practice gives you the opportunity to become aware of these automatic behaviors and then make a choice. So, instead of going through the same daily routines, you can choose to do things differently. You can get out of bed on a different side. You can eat something different from breakfast, or you can take a different route to work. This may sound quite trivial, but what's happened is that you've brought into consciousness these behaviors. You've raised your level of awareness and can make a choice and be, as is often said, in the moment. You might be surprised to learn that for many people, certain types of mindfulness or meditation technique can provoke anxiety. On the other hand, you might also be surprised to learn that for some, plummeting out of an aircraft, driving 150 miles an hour around a racecourse, skiing down a steep slope, or climbing up a rock puts them in a very mindful and relaxing state. Many people find that thrilling stimulation focuses the mind, much more than any form of quiet contemplation. They are, in effect, practicing a turning off form of meditation. In such situations, it's necessary to turn off external stimuli, as your life depends on focusing on what you're doing at that moment. Studies have shown that not everyone finds mindfulness practice relaxing. Many become anxious, start to sweat, and can feel their hearts pounding, and experience what is known as relaxation-induced anxiety. One reason that there are so many ways to achieve a mindful state is because there are different types of tension, anxiety, fear, and fatigue. Some people tend to experience stress more in their bodies. For instance, do you often feel tight muscles, aches and pains, nervous stomach, racing heartbeat, or feel jittery? If so, you're probably more of a body reactor. On the other hand, do you suffer more from excessive worrying, difficulty concentrating because of distracting thoughts, anxiety-provoking images intruding into your mind, or problems with your mind racing? In this case, you may be experiencing stress as a mind reactor. Of course, each of us reacts differently to stress in body and mind. After hours of writing or number crunching, you may feel mentally fatigued or bored. However, switching to another activity, even if it is physically strenuous, can revive you. Understanding your symptoms can help you better select the type of mindfulness technique that may work best for you. By matching the type of mindfulness strategy you use to the type of tension that you're experiencing in your body or mind, you may be able to achieve a mindful state more readily and more easily. If you're feeling more body tension, you might try muscle relaxation, deep breathing, walking, or a hot bath or sauna. If mental distraction and worrying are your problems, you might try a mind-absorbing approach. This would include meditation, visual music, reading, or losing yourself and your attention in a hobby or game. Vigorous exercise and competitive sport tend to be good for achieving mindfulness of physical and mental tension. I think it's important to emphasize that there are many different ways to practice mindfulness. If a certain method makes you more tense, try another one, and I'll discuss several methods later. Or you can shift back and forth between techniques. Sometimes a mental relaxer will work better for body tension, and vice versa. So please don't hesitate to experiment. Remember, true mindfulness is more than a matter of sitting down and practicing a technique for 20 minutes a day. It's not like popping a pill. As much as you can, allow everyday activities and involvement in work, play, and hobbies to be opportunities for you to practice mindfulness. I'd like to talk a little about what is commonly known as getting in sync. Everyone is different, and we vary greatly in our optimal set point for stimulation. You may feel that you hunger for a different level of excitement at different moments. We all teeter on the brink of overload and boredom. Shifting gears and changing speed to find the optimal level of stimulation seems to be the key, rather than being locked into one technique or exercise, whether it be 20 minutes of sitting silently or 20 minutes of running. How can we recognize when we're getting the right amount of stimulation? There's an intuitive sense of being in balance. Some people refer to it as being in sync, or experiencing a sensation of flowing. It has a timeless, or at least out-of-time quality. You focus your attention fully on the activity, and self-consciousness fades into the background. A sense of control and engagement pervades our participation. This comes from total immersion and involvement in work or leisure activity, particularly one in which there is balance between the demands of the situation and your skills and capabilities. It could be an intense game of tennis against an equally matched opponent. If you're much better than your partner, or vice versa, the game is more likely to result in frustration or demoralization than in an enlivening sense of absorption. Many healthy pleasures can provide opportunities to experience this sensation or optimal stimulation. Involvement with work, sports, or games, talking to a pet, shopping or joking with friends, listening to music or playing an instrument, walking, running, eating, reading, watching television, or daydreaming. When you're in a mindful state, it's difficult to be anxious because you can't experience two opposing states at the same time. This is because any strong emotion locks you into a single viewpoint, and the thinking part of the brain simply cannot function properly, which is why we can often appear stupid when we are emotionally aroused. The higher learning centers of the brain simply cannot work when hijacked by emotions. Becoming more mindful helps unlock the emotionally driven state, allowing the thinking part of the brain to work more effectively and help people to consider or experience other viewpoints and solutions to difficulties. All real learning usually takes place when there are low levels of emotional stimulus, or we're in a more mindful state. That's when the ability to see things from multiple viewpoints and consequently generate creative insights is most likely to happen. This illustrates the difference between conditioning and learning. People can be conditioned with new behaviors or beliefs when they are emotionally aroused, but they cannot understand and really learn in a high state of emotional arousal. People can appear to enjoy being conditioned by cults who emotionally arouse them and by emotionally arousing therapies, but essentially what's happening is that their will and ability to choose is taken away and they're exploited. We need to ask ourselves if it's right to exploit people in this way. There are, as I mentioned earlier, many ways to achieve a mindful state. We're going to concentrate on some of these techniques that can be used by anyone. But first, a few notes about mindfulness practice. A student of mindfulness asked his teacher when he practiced mindfulness. The teacher replied, "I practice mindfulness when I'm not being mindful." It's important to realize that mindfulness and relaxation are not one and the same thing. Whilst practicing mindfulness, you may or may not be relaxed, because, as one person wrote, the purpose of mindfulness is the intentional accepting and non-judgmental focus of one's attention on the emotions, thoughts, and sensations occurring in the present moment, which can be trained by meditational practices. Meditation is primarily an exercise in deployment of attention, rather than in reason or concept formation. The purpose of relaxation techniques is to stimulate the relaxation response and to create a relaxed state of mind and body. When practicing mindfulness, you might become more relaxed, but this is not the purpose of mindfulness. It's a beneficial side effect of the practice. You may also notice that your stress levels are reduced, but once again, this is not the purpose of mindfulness. It's a beneficial side effect. Many people become a little nervous when talking about mindfulness or meditation and feel that mindfulness is related to religion. Mindfulness is not a form of religion. Mindfulness is simply a method of mental training. It does not take a lot of time and it's not complicated, nor is it about success or failure. Mindfulness is not about accepting the unacceptable. This can give you the ability to become more relaxed and develop what is known as the observing self, and to see the world with greater clarity, so that you're able to make wiser and more considered action to change. Mindfulness can also be used to help to cultivate a deep and compassionate awareness that allows you to assess your goals and find the optimum path towards realizing them. Mindfulness meditation is about observation without criticism, and can also include being compassionate with yourself. It's now a well-proven technique and forms the basis of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT. MBCT is now recognized by the National Institute of Clinical Excellence and has been shown to have many benefits, and these include regular meditators are happier and more contented than average. Anxiety, depression, and irritability all decrease with regular sessions of meditation. Memory also improves, reaction times become faster, and mental and physical stamina increase. Regular meditators enjoy better and more fulfilling relationships. Studies have also shown that meditation bolsters the immune system and thus helps you to fight off colds, flu, and other diseases. If you're interested in learning more about meditation and its benefits, then I suggest buying a copy of A Path with Heart by Jack Cornfield, or Mindfulness by Mark Williams and Danny Penman, or a copy of my book, The Art of Living. If you have any specific health problems, then you might want to look at Mindfulness for Health. These books will give you access to a wide range of resources, and you can also download free meditations. Practicing mindfulness for around 20 to 30 minutes a day is more than sufficient for most people. It's also wise to remember, as I mentioned earlier, that mindfulness practice is not a cure-all. It has many benefits emotionally, mentally, and physically, and these benefits can be experienced as long as you continue to carry out your mindfulness practice. But remember, as Arthur Dakeman wrote in his book, The Observing Self, the purpose of mindfulness is mindfulness. Here's a few mindfulness practice guidelines. There are 2 essential steps to practicing mindfulness, and these are: firstly, the repetition of a word, a sound, praise, prayer, or muscular activity. Secondly, the ability to passively accept and disregard everyday thoughts that inevitably come to mind, and returning to your repetition of a word, sound, praise, prayer, or activity. I'll give you the guidelines to a general technique which has been taught and used by many. 1. You pick a focus word, a short phrase, or a prayer that is firmly rooted in your belief system. 2. Sit quietly in a comfortable position. 3. Close your eyes. 4. You can carry out a body scan of your muscles, progressing from your feet to your calves, thighs, abdomen, shoulders, arms, hands, head and neck. 5. Breathe slowly and naturally, and as you do, say your focus word, sound, phrase, or prayer silently to yourself as you breathe out. 6. Assume a passive, non-critical, non-judgmental attitude. Don't worry how well you're doing. When other thoughts come to mind, simply say to yourself, "Oh well," and gently return to your repetition. And continue this practice for 10 to 20 minutes. When you've finished, don't stand immediately. Continue sitting quietly for a minute or so, allowing other thoughts to return. Then open your eyes and sit for another minute before rising. And finally, practice the technique once or twice daily. Good times to do so are often before breakfast and before dinner, but it's important that you find a time that you're comfortable with. You can practice mindfulness while exercising or carrying out any activity. If you're jogging or walking, pay attention to the cadence of your feet on the ground. Left, right, left, right, left, right. And when other thoughts come into your mind, you just simply return to left, right, left, right, left, right. Of course, keep your eyes open. Similarly, swimmers can pay attention to the tempo of their strokes, cyclists to the whir of the wheels, dancers to the beat of the music, others to the rhythm of their breathing. You may or may not know this, but self-observation, renunciation, and non-attachment are also practices that are associated with mindfulness training, but they don't necessarily get the same attention. Self-observation is the practice of being able to observe yourself as if you were watching another person, and this will be discussed in more detail in another podcast, or you can refer to it as the observing self. Renunciation and non-attachment are best summed up in the words of Suzuki, a famous Japanese philosopher, when he writes, "Renunciation is not about giving up the things of this world, It is about accepting that they go away. Renunciation is the process, it is said, of conquering desire and of not requiring or needing anything. Many believe that in order to practice renunciation and non-attachment, it's necessary to cut yourself off from the world and to live in a monastery or an ashram where you will be freed from exposure from all the things that might tempt you. Others believe this is not necessary and offer the view that renunciation and non-attachment can be learned in the normal everyday world. This is perhaps best illustrated in some advice given to Raphael IV, who travelled to the Mideast in search of the teachers of Gurdjieff, the Sufis, and was asked, "Are you prepared to leave the world as you know it and live in a mountain retreat on a very basic diet?" I signified that I was. "You see," he nodded his head regretfully, "you still feel that to find knowledge you must seek a solitary life away from impure things. This is a primitive attitude, and one satisfactory for savages. Can you comprehend the uselessness of abandoning the world for the sake of your selfish development? You may need a course," he went on, "at a Sarmoon center, but that will not mean total abandonment of your mundane worldly activity, provided you do not allow it, nay, invite it, to corrupt you. If you have enough skill, you can actually harness the negative forces to serve you, but you must have enough skill. Every activity can be a vehicle for development, as long as one is free from attachment to the result of the activity. Becoming aware of all the various influences on who you are and how you behave gives you the opportunity to make a choice. You can either allow the driving force to make a choice for you, or you can make that choice yourself. A choice that will be the best one for you and for those around you. But you can only exercise the ability to make a choice when you have mastered the skills of meditation, turning off, opening up your attention, renunciation, and non-attachment. Another thing to consider when incorporating mindfulness into your everyday life is the concept of right-mindedness. Right-mindedness is a Buddhist practice and requires that one be conscious of everything that one does, to attend very closely to ordinary activities, and to open up awareness to these activities while engaged in them. For example, the street cleaner has to take his task of sweeping as the starting point for meditation. So likewise must the potter take his task of producing clay utensils on his potter's wheel, and the cobbler his handicrafts. Here, therefore, it's evidence that one may do what he will so long as he is clearly aware of what he's doing. Every activity is of equal value as a basis for what's known as a dharma exercise. Right-mindedness can be part of almost any activity that one performs, no matter how degrading. There is no action that cannot be used for the purposes of the alteration of one's consciousness. Here's a quote from the book Meditation and Psychology by Ornstein. Another very important, practical, and useful form of meditation, or mental development, is to be aware and mindful of whatever you do, physically, verbally, during the daily routine of work in your life, private, public, and professional. Whether you walk, stand, sit, lie down, or sleep, whether you stretch or bend your limbs, whether you look around, whether you put on your clothes, whether you talk or keep silent, whether you eat or drink, even whether you answer the calls of nature. In these and other activities, you should be fully aware and mindful of the act performed at the moment. That's to say, that you should live in the present moment, in the present action. This does not mean that you should not think of the past or the future at all. On the contrary, you should think of them in relation to the present moment, to the present action, when and where this is relevant. People do not generally live in their actions in the present moment. They often live in the past or future. Though they seem to be doing something now, here, they live somewhere else in their thoughts, in their problems and their worries. usually in the memories of the past or desires and speculations about the future. Therefore, they do not live, nor do they enjoy what they do at the moment. So, they are unhappy and discontented with the present moment and with the work at hand. Naturally, they cannot give themselves fully to what they appear to be doing. Adverse effects of mindfulness and meditation are rarely spoken about. Few people make any mention of adverse effects, so it might be worthwhile to take a moment to consider any possible adverse effects of mindfulness practice, and some of them are illustrated in the story that follows. A dramatic Tibetan story tells of a student who, each day, while meditating in his room, perceived a spider descending in front of him, growing larger and larger. He resolved to kill the spider and told his teacher of his plan, to stab it the next time it lowered itself in front of him. The teacher instructed him to do nothing except draw a chalk mark on the spider's belly and then report back to him. When the student returned, the teacher told him to look at his own belly. The chalk mark was there. In considering the potential usefulness of mindfulness or meditation, we must also recognize that some people are unable or unwilling to spend the time doing the practice. There will be many who start and quit, in spite of obtaining initial benefits. Not everyone is improved by the experience. On the contrary, adverse effects are common. Some people find intensive practice a convenient way to withdraw from social interaction and defend against intimacy. Good results are not guaranteed. Certain practices can increase obsessiveness and schizoid tendencies. Impressive altered states of consciousness are not necessarily accompanied by an increase in maturity. In fact, the reverse is just as likely. Misinterpretation of altered consciousness may result in an increase in grandiosity, magical thinking, and paranoia. Anxiety, even terror, may be occasioned by the weakening of conceptual and perceptual boundaries. Adverse effects are almost certain for those who reason that if 30 minutes of mindfulness practice is good, 3 hours is better, and a whole day even more so. Such dubious logic seems to flourish in the field of mindfulness practice. These people would not ordinarily consider taking 100 aspirins simply because 2 had relieved their headache. Although they begin meditation or mindfulness practice on a modest enough scale, they soon proceed to gorge themselves. The result can be psychotic decompensation. Psychotic decompensation is a term that refers to the deterioration of the mental health of an individual who, up until that point, was maintaining good mental health. Their perception of the world may change, and they may have grandiose thoughts, thinking that their way of practicing mindfulness is the only way, and this will ultimately affect their relationships with others and the world around them. Because of these possible side effects, it's recommended that you employ these techniques carefully, and if you're experiencing any adverse effects, then either stop or reduce your practice or seek some advice from an experienced professional. Generally speaking, there are many positive benefits to becoming more mindful, and these are, as I mentioned earlier, that regular meditators are often happier and more contented than average. Anxiety, depression, and irritability all decrease with regular sessions of meditation. Memory also improves, reaction times become faster, and mental and physical stamina increase. Regular meditators usually enjoy better and more fulfilling relationships. And also, studies have shown that meditation bolsters the immune system and thus helps you to fight off colds, flu, and other diseases. There are many mindfulness or awareness practice sessions in this series of them, and practice them on a regular basis. And before I go, here's a very simple breathing technique you can use at any time, and it's called the 7-11 breathing technique. This is a simple but very powerful technique, and it's easy to learn. It has an immediate beneficial effect and can be used as an exercise, and it takes the following form. Firstly, find yourself a quiet place to sit or lie down. If you're lying down, then I suggest you bend your knees and put your feet flat on the floor, as this allows the stomach muscles to relax more easily. Secondly, as you breathe in to a count of 7. Thirdly, when you breathe out slowly for a count of 11. And finally, repeat this process for a couple of minutes. The reason for making the out-breath last longer is that inhalation has been shown to trigger the sympathetic nervous system, and exhalation stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your relaxation response. By breathing out more slowly than breathing in, you strengthen the relaxation response over the arousal response. And the key thing to remember is that you cannot be tense and relaxed at the same time. I hope you found that session useful and have gained some benefits. As I mentioned earlier, you get maximum benefits from all these sessions if you repeat them on a regular basis. And also, as I mentioned earlier, if you'd like any more information about me and the work that I do, then have a look at my website, which is www.elementals.net.